What's up everyone, Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic, and I have yet another collection update for you. Number 99. I have 99 problems, but doing a collection update video is not one of them, obviously. So again, we got a good mix of stuff in this one. Some newer stuff, some much older stuff. A good mix of underground and very well-known bands, and a lot of EPs in this one too. This also actually has some stuff that I picked up at Under the Surface Records in Tiffin, Ohio. If you were ever in Tiffin, Ohio, go check out that record store. There are lots of cool underground selections there. He's still kind of getting his shop together, but I found some fucking killer stuff in there. So if I can find some killer stuff, and I own this much shit and I'm still able to find stuff that I don't own, definitely check it out, because I'm sure you will find some cool stuff as well. All right, so we got another giant stack. Let's just get right into it. Asaphalex Aporia. This is the 2010 debut album from this San Francisco-based death metal act. I actually own a fair amount of their stuff, but I did not have their debut. And honestly, this is kind of one of the most different ones in their discography in terms of what I've listened to. Now, first off, this band actually features members of Mortuous and Vastum in there, and I believe at least at one time they had the bassist and frontman of Necrotic in here. But their other stuff is very sludgy, dirty, like very Autopsy-inspired death metal. And there's definitely some of that on here, though this is way more crusty and D-beat. Like, this is almost like the death metal equivalent of a band like Toxic Holocaust. This is pretty much very just D-beat driven, a lot of like nods like Discharge and Doom. And, well, like some really interesting transitions on here. The title track is a little odd, like kind of that Voivod level of quirkiness to it. I'd have to say the opening to Gift of Death sounds a lot like the opening to Under the Sun by Black Sabbath. Like, it has that same doomy riff. It's a little bit different, but it's pretty fucking close. I have to say, I dig this one. Again, it's a little bit different than most of the stuff that I've jammed. Like, they've kind of gone like way more towards Autopsy, which Autopsy is definitely present in terms of like the influences on here, but I don't know, this is just kind of like fun and high energy, and there's a lot of variety. I was really surprised with the song MOTH, Moth. They actually have it as an acronym. I don't know what it stands for, but there's some like southern sludgy riffs in it that I think were like really catchy, and I really wasn't expecting that. Solid debut. I'm really glad I picked this one up. It's, again, kind of different from the rest of their stuff, but I dig it overall. So yeah, if you like crusty D-beat driven death metal and Autopsy and all that shit, definitely check this out. Empty Throne, Glossolalia. This is the debut EP from this blackened death metal, I mean, I guess you can call it a supergroup. This does feature members of Angerot. It actually has Gabe Sieber on drums from Kennedy Vale and Mike Party, formerly of Zastler, on here. And this is a blackened death metal project between them, and this is some pretty epic, evil sounding shit. This is only 3 songs, but all of them are over 7 minutes long, and there's a lot of like really clever like melodic death metal riffs squeezed in with this really cool, almost kind of gothic black metal atmosphere. Lots of nods to Necrophobic, I would say, but there's some flat out just brutal moments on here that are a little bit heavier than even Necrophobic gets. Very riffy, very fast. I love the vocals on here. They are just absolutely nasty sounding, and I particularly love the chanted vocals on That Day Has Come. It just kind of accentuates all the fun evil that's going on here. Very crisp, modern production. There's a lot of atmosphere to it. Again, it just feels creepy and evil, but there are loads of hooks on this. Now, this comes out on Wise Blood Records, which I know Metal Viking gets a lot of stuff on there, and I kind of slept on this one for a while, but I got it through Night Shift merch, and yeah, this was an awesome fucking purchase. Killer EP. Could have been on my year-end list for EPs last year, but I missed it, so it's here now, and it's awesome. I totally recommend this if you love shit like Necrophobic, but you want it a little bit more brutal, I guess. Definitely check this out. Graveripper, Radiated Remains. This is the debut EP from this Indiana-based black and thrash / speed metal act. This also comes out on Wise Blood Records, actually, so is the next one. Bit of a theme here. Now, generally, if it's black and thrash, I'm already really interested, but I found out that this was actually mastered by Joel Grind from Toxic Holocaust, and I was like, well, all right, I'm definitely gonna get this. And this is flat out black and thrash metal. Machine gun guitars, kind of, you know, sinister dissonant riffs. I have to say the vocals are a little bit more just like straightforward thrash vocals. Like, there's not a tremendous amount of reverb on it. They don't try to blacken them up and make them sound extra evil. It's just a nice harsh delivery, but it's fucking energetic as hell. There's even occasional blast beats they kind of pepper in almost like a fill, and just machine gun guitars left and right. This is just riffy and thrashy as fuck. In terms of its most blackened moments, the tremolo harmony on King Killer is fucking exceptional. It's probably the one that feels like the most blackened on here. There were some issues with maybe the mix on here. It feels like the vocals kind of move around, like sometimes they're a little bit louder in one song versus another. But overall, I dug this. There's not a lot of variety, but I didn't really want a lot of variety. Like, honestly, I just wanted some solid black and thrash, and this keeps the energy going throughout the entire EP. It's pretty much one after the other, like a bullet train sort of listen, but it's fun throughout. So yeah, if you love black and thrash and you love Toxic Holocaust and shit like that, definitely check this out. Mother of Graves, In Somber Dreams. This is the debut EP from this Indiana-based death doom, melodic death doom act. Another one that came out on Wise Blood Records. This was also talked about a lot on Metal Vikings channel, and I can see why. This reminds me a lot of like the early Peaceville stuff, especially My Dying Bride and Paradise Lost. It is very melody-centric, but melancholy and bleak and kind of sad. And while it does get like more brutal occasionally, this is more about just keeping that somber mood going, and it's excellent. Like, it really sounds like it came out of, like, you know, England in the late 80s, early 90s. Or honestly, it even kind of reminds me of early Catatonia, especially Brave Murder Day, because the vocals, when it comes down, the harsh vocals are very deep, kind of Ockerfeltish, but there's that clean switch up occasionally, and it kind of reminds me a lot of Amorphous. And by that I mean like current Amorphous, like kind of like Tommy's vocals. Honestly, listening to this, if you hadn't told me this was from Indiana, I would believe that this was European. I mean, they even have a song called Deliverance, and it does kind of sound like Opeth, though it doesn't sound like Opeth's Deliverance, because I don't think any song sounds like Opeth's Deliverance. But I just love the whole vibe on this. There's lots of atmosphere. There's even like pianos on the urn, which I think is a fantastic track. There's even some up-tempo moments in the title track on here, which almost kind of sound like dreary Iron Maiden harmonies. There's a lot going on here, and I like the fact that it isn't just slow and plotting the entire time. There's really good pockets of like up-tempo material to sort of break it up, but never once does it leave like that death doom feel. Awesome EP. I should have snagged this a while ago. Again, lucky enough to find this on Night Shift merch, and solid pickup. I certainly recommend this, especially if you're a fan of Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride and early Catatonia. It definitely has that vibe. I am definitely going to be on the watch to see when they drop something new, because this is really fucking sweet. So yeah, check it out. Venom Prison, Animus. It's their 2016 debut full length from this UK death metal / hardcore act. They are currently blowing up on that new album Erebus, which is fucking awesome. This definitely more raw. And speaking of raw, man, I think that dude's getting the raw deal on the cover. Kind of looks like a botched vasectomy, though I think vasectomies were probably a little bit rough back in like the, I don't know, 1800s maybe? I don't know. Rough time. He's not enjoying this. Anyway, debut album, and I kind of held off on this one because I got Samsara and I heard some tracks off of this, and I was like, oh, this is good, but it definitely feels more raw. And you can tell pretty much across the board, like, there's more slammy riffs on here. The hardcore grooves are good, but they're not as good as they are on newer material. In fact, I think these guys have become much better songwriters. Larissa's vocals are not quite as good as they are now. Like, she has really found a solid delivery, and incorporating clean vocals I think is really good too. But on here, it's just sort of this very raw scream, and it sounds like she's just fucking shredding her fucking larynx. But it's intense, it's visceral, it's biting. The breakdown on destruction of human privilege is earth-shattering. So this is just heavy, but not with a lot of nuance, and you can totally hear the improvement over the course of albums. They became, again, much better songwriters. But if you want them at their most visceral, this is definitely it. Well, maybe the early EPs too, but yeah, this, in terms of a full length, much more raw than what they're doing now. But that is not to say what they're doing now is not brutal as fuck. I just think there's way more clever melodies and such, and I don't know, just improvement overall. I have to say a big standout on here was Amanticize Escaton, or however the hell you say that word. Really dig that one. Lots of Morbid Angel vibes. It kind of changes the mood a little bit because, again, this is just pummeling chuggy riffs left and right, so it was kind of cool to hear some more like tremolo riffs and kind of build up like an evil atmosphere. Awesome debut. I really dig this, though I think what they're doing now is much better. This was still a solid launching point. So if you have missed out on this album for whatever reason, I recommend checking it out. It is brutal as fuck, start to finish. And I mean, if you're listening to death metal and death metal hardcore hybrids, that's kind of what you want. So yeah, definitely check it out. Coffin Feeder, Stereo Homicide EP. It's the debut EP from this, I believe, Belgian death grind / hardcore act, fronted by none other than Svenko from Aborted, and, well, kind of sounds like Aborted. It's kind of unavoidable with Svenko on vocals, like he has such a distinct style, and it is associated almost entirely with Aborted. He is the only member that has pretty much carried on every album on there. Except I would say maybe this is a little bit groovier, kind of borders on deathcore at points, but honestly, it's still a lot of fun. It's just not different enough from Aborted to really kind of separate itself from it, because you still have all the horror atmosphere, you still have the tongue-in-cheek, you know, gore humor. I mean, it's got a giant boombox with a pentagram on it and, you know, corpses and shit. Yeah, this is 100% like Aborted sort of thing. I wouldn't say any of it's bad, it just, again, feels like Aborted. And I did pre-order Fetal Blood Eagle, which is another project that he did, which I guess is more brutal death metal related. We'll see how that one sounds. I'm very curious. I have to say, there are too many damn Coffin bands out there. And it gets, like, super fucking confusing. Like, dude, there's Coffin Dust, Coffin Mulch, Coffin Lust, Coffin Worms. So yeah, there's a ton of Coffin bands. It was just kind of a rant there I had to get out. But yeah, another Coffin band. It's fun. It's brutal. There's some good fucking, you know, chuggy grooves and breakdowns on here. If you like Aborted, there's a damn good chance you'll probably like this. I still really enjoyed it, though I kind of wanted to hear something a little bit more different than Aborted, but I love Aborted, so that's really not a huge issue. But yeah, if you love Aborted and maybe like more groovy death metal, hardcore, deathcore maybe, definitely check this out. Persephone Metanoia, I think that's how you pronounce that. This is the 7th album from this Andorian. That's a country that I literally had to look up. It's like, that doesn't sound like a real place. But it is. It's just small, like Liechtenstein and Luxembourg, like an itty-bitty country. But this band has been around for a long time. I have heard their names in progressive metal and tech death circles. And I finally decided to check one out, and this is their newest offering. Came out on Napalm Records. And this is pretty damn solid. Lots of progressive metal leanings, but there's still a bit of like, you know, technical, like almost tech death play on here occasionally. And you have some really cool guest stars. The opening track, the title track, which is more of an intro, features Einar Solberg from Leprous on vocals, which you can pick his vocals out immediately. Like, that dude has the most wild fucking range. And then you have Stefan Kermer from Falcandra and Obscura and Angel Vivaldi on here, you know, doing extra guitar work and such. And this is pretty fucking lavish. Like, there's a lot of cool shit going on. The songs are long, they're very epic sounding, but they get flat out brutal at points. So tons of different dynamics on here. Actually, I would go as far as saying this album is just huge in terms of scope. There's lots of strings and synths, kind of Devin Townsend-ish. And when it comes down to like the riff a minute style, it's kind of close to Allegiant a bit. I have to say, a big standout for me was the giant instrumental Consciousness Part 3, which I'm not familiar with parts 1 or 2, but 3 seems like it's pretty damn good, and 11 minutes and 6 seconds. And then you have the 3-part epic at the end, Amebix, parts 1, 2, and 3, which is this massive fucking song that actually features Angel Vivaldi and Stefan Kermer on there too. And great mix of harsh and clean vocals. So much going on, and it doesn't seem to run into each other very much. This is very well produced too. I just really dug this. This is a really solid release. I need to actually check out more of their stuff. Like, you know, 7 albums in, and I got the 7th one. Yeah, I need to check out more of their stuff just to kind of hear the sense of progression through the albums. But I do like this. This is really fucking good. I just picked this up on a whim. I pretty much knew a lot of people were talking about this band. And maybe not this release in particular, but just in terms of like prog metal circles, I've heard this band's name dropped a ton of times. So yeah, if you love prog metal and you like it like kind of intense with a little bit of like a death metal bite to it, definitely check this out. This is a really solid album. Zeal and Ardor, Wake of a Nation EP. I did not even know this EP existed, and luckily when the record store that I go to ordered the new Zealand Ardor, which was in the last collection update, he got this one too, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't own that. And, well, I mean, the album cover and the title, this is pretty obvious what this one is about, and, you know, with all the horrible shit that is going on this planet currently, I forgot about some other horrible shit that went on not too long ago, and I was like, yeah, this is definitely a theme that I definitely understand. And it's just a really harsh reminder of some bullshit from not too long ago. This is, I would say, very heartfelt, especially the opener or vigil, but the heart also feels a lot of anger, and there's a lot of contempt and rage. And before this, you know, they were more focused on their narrative about the slaves that gave up God and worshiped Satan to get the fuck out. And this one kind of skips that narrative and goes right for police brutality and all the deaths that, you know, resulted in it. And this definitely embodies that. It's got protest chants all over it. There's a nasty industrial bite to it. It's full of fucking contempt and rage, and I dig it. I mean, I dig pretty much everything this band releases. They have such a cool, unique sound. And after seeing them live, I mean, they fucking won me over there because they fucking kill it live. Now, it was interesting, they got Will Putney from Fit for an Autopsy to actually do the production here, and he does a really solid job. And usually I have an issue with, like, how much compression he throws in there, but this actually sounds really full, and the drums sound extra fucking punchy. Could have used a little bit more punch in the bass drum in the last Fit for an Autopsy album, but yeah, that's, you know, over there. I love the dreary hooks on Tuskegee. The giant breakdowns that are all over here are just heavier than hell. Now, subject matter wise, this might bother some people, especially if you have a Blue Lives Matter flag hanging up. I don't fucking care. This is a killer EP. It might be politically divisive, but again, I don't fucking care. I'm pretty much a firm believer that the law applies to all of us, or it should apply to none of us. So police brutality is fucking horseshit. There's a difference between a cop protecting himself versus just flat out beating the shit out of someone because they can. But that's just my stance on it. My stance on this EP though, absolutely killer. Strongly recommend checking it out. I mean, if you like Zeal and Ardor, you know what this is about. And if you haven't jammed them yet, I don't know if you'd start with this one, maybe Stranger Fruit, maybe the newer one. I don't know. It's just a really wild band, and they have such a cool, unique sound, and I pretty much dig all their shit so far. So yeah, check it out. AMBIX, or Amebix, I don't know. I really never found out how to pronounce this band's name. Anyway, this is their second album, came out in 1987, and these guys were pretty much an underground crust punk band that was like super influential, though this album was quite a bit different. This is pretty much known as their metal album. And I guess I can see why. Like, there's still crust punk and post-punk elements. There's still that atmosphere. The vocals definitely are kind of similar to like bands like Killing Joke. But this one sort of embraces a lot of thrash metal, and I would say like Motorhead. Like, the D beats are still there, but the riffs are different. There's a lot of machine gun guitars on here. Like, the band is not going fast as hell all the time. Like, you know, it's just like slow, groovy sections, but they're still machine gunning the fuck out of the guitars. Especially on tracks like The Power Remains, Time Bomb, and Chain Reaction. Like, those guitars are just fucking flying. Meanwhile, the rest of the band is kind of finding like different little pockets to be in while the guitarist just goes fucking apeshit. And listening to this, I heard a lot of stuff that would be akin to like the punkier era of Darkthrone too, which I thought was really interesting. Now, the only album I have by this band is Sonic Mass, which came out in 2011. That was their big comeback album. And even that one's kind of hard to peg on a scale. Like, the crust punk stuff was there, but there was a lot of stuff in there that reminded me again of Killing Joke, just in terms of like post-punk atmosphere, and even down to like the production and the riffs on it, very close to Killing Joke. This is definitely more of a metal album, and reading, you know, in forums and such, this album kind of gets, I don't know, maybe a little bit of shade thrown on it just because, like, well, they became a metal band instead of sticking with their punk stuff in their first album. I don't know on the first album, I still want to check that out, but this was a pretty solid attempt at metal. There's like some goth rock mixed in. There's a lot of variety in terms of the different styles in here. It's just tonally very odd. The songs are kind of strange. They kind of meander a lot. There's weird clean passages, again, like thrashy guitars over sections that don't necessarily require thrashy guitars, but they're still kind of welcome. It's an interesting album. I dig it. I want to get their first one just so I can actually kind of round out what they have, because I think that's the only one I'm missing because they don't have many full lengths. But yeah, I would say check this out. It's odd, but it's pretty damn good, honestly. So yeah, check it out. Bane, Give Blood. This is the second album from this Massachusetts hardcore act. They are now defunct as of, I believe, 2018. The band featured members of Converge and Backbone, pretty much just straight up old school hardcore. And for the most part, I really dig it. Like, the riffs are fucking solid on here. That has just fucking hostile energy. It's in your face. Giant hardcore breakdowns, punky D beats, kind of thrashy occasionally. The vocals have always been an issue with me. They're kind of similar to Snapcase, though I think Snapcase did them much better. This guy is just yelling, and it's yelling like not in key, like he's just yelling on the microphone, and like even his vocal cadences are kind of odd. It's always been the thing that's kept me from like fully just loving the shit out of this band. But they have some killer songs in here. Some Came Running, the second track, is absolutely awesome. I love that main riff. The breakdown on Bang the Drum Slowly is just brutal as fuck. And honestly, when the gang vocals come in as support, it's not that bad, especially the last track, Ollie versus Frazier 1. The big shouted vocals become less annoying when everyone's shouting, and they're kind of helping them out in terms of like maybe keeping it in some key. I don't know. The vocals are the only thing I don't like about this band, and I actually have two of their other albums, and that's generally my complaint about those two albums. But when it comes down to the style and the overall playing on here, it's fantastic. If you love hardcore, you'll love the music on here. And you might like the vocals. I just don't. I don't know. Like, the dude just yells too much. I feel like he was just yelling at the fucking guy running the fucking mixing board the entire time. But yeah, overall, it's a pretty decent album. Just one major gripe. I mean, if you love hardcore, you'll probably dig this. So yeah, check it out. Carnivore, Retaliation, and the self-titled. This is a compilation of both that came out on Roadrunner in 1991. I already own both of these, so I did not need to get this. But I did, because I love both albums, and I kind of wanted one that was a little bit older because, you know, it's got that old school Roadrunner stamp, and who doesn't love that? That was back when buying something on Roadrunner generally was pretty worthwhile. So we already did a retro review. In fact, I think that was like the second retro review we ever did. I love both of these albums. That pretty much comes across in that retro review, so I really don't need to go into this one that much. If you've never jammed Carnivore, holy shit, you were missing out on a crossover thrash essential, just in terms of both albums, though I think Retaliation is the better of the two. Awesome stuff. I already owned it, but me being a compulsive collector, I mean, fucking why not? So yeah, that's pretty much it there. So I'm just gonna say check it out because fuck yeah, you should check it out. Def Leppard, High and Dry. This is the second album from this UK, I guess you could say they were heavy metal, like new album, but at this point they had pretty much kind of become a bit more commercial. And honestly, this was the one that got them noticed because it has Bring It On the Heartache, and I unironically love that song. I've loved it since I was a kid. I just think it's just a solid fucking song. And honestly, I like early Def Leppard. I kind of cut off at Pyromania, which I also own, which I also do love because I grew up with that album, and all those fucking singles were all over the radio, all over MTV. I ended up just fucking loving them. This is where they kind of started to find that formula. In fact, they had John Mutt Lang do the production on here, and he kind of brought over a little bit of that AC/DC magic on here. But this still has some great fucking songs that kind of step outside of the AC/DC formula. You still get a little bit of that early new album sound on Lady Strange and Mirror Mirror Look Into My Eyes. And I really like the song Switch 625 because it's kind of a slow, moody builder. It was clear these guys were definitely pushing for accessibility. In fact, I think bands used to shit on because they had I forget what the hell the song was, but it had America in the title in the first one. It's like, you're just pandering to them. It's like, well, that's not a bad group to pander to because we buy the fuck out of music. But yeah, I dig this album. I think it's just a solid rocker of an album. It does flirt with accessibility quite a bit more than, say, the first album, but it's really good. Like, they knew how to write the right riffs, the right hooks. It's great melodies on it. it's just a fun 80s rocker. So yeah, if you've always been hesitant on Def Leppard, the early stuff is still pretty damn good. Like, I really still dig the first 3 albums. It's just after that, I was like, okay, this just became this washed out pop band that had guitars. Like, that was about it. But yeah, if you love 80s metal and 80s hard rock, I would say this is a pretty essential listen, so check it out. Enemy of Mind, No Safe Place. This is the second album from this Pittsburgh-based death metal / hardcore act. I picked this one up on a whim, and in fact, the last few actually from AMBIX on has been stuff that I got at Under the Surface Records. And this one was actually recommended because, like, yeah, if you like that style of hardcore meets death metal, you should definitely check them out. And I did. And this is definitely that. In fact, the opening track, the ending, has slam riffs and hardcore grooves all over it, and it's like, dude, that's fucking nice. The vocals on here definitely are way more on the hardcore side. Kind of a gripe because there's really not a lot of variation or dynamics in them. It's just a steady barrage of like a hardcore growl. But they complement the music pretty well because the music is just fucking brutal. Like, they just search out the next big dirty fucking riff they can throw in a breakdown and just hit you with it. And the riffs are really what drives this album, and you do get a fair amount of variety in them. Like, the song Unlearned Purpose gets a little bit more technical in a way. And Word of God actually has like a decapitated like syncopation to it in terms of like just triplet chugs and shit. The lyrics, unfortunately, since it's a hardcore delivery, you can make out more, and it's kind of like the typical, you know, hardcore tough guy lyrics, and I kind of got tired of that. But musically, I really dug this. Like, there's a lot of different stuff going on. It's groovier than hell. Like, this is just a flat-out headbanger of an album. And I'd be definitely willing to check out more by this band. I'm a sucker for, like, big mosh grooves, and that is essentially what this album is built on. So if you like the whole death metal meets hardcore sort of sound that has been all over the place here lately, definitely recommend checking this one out. It's pretty solid. Martyr AD, The Human Condition in 12 Fractions. So their debut album came out in 2001, and I actually own their second album, so I saw this one, I was like, well, I hear this one's a lot better because that second album was kind of eh. But this band only put out 2 albums and then broke up. They were from Minneapolis, and this is metalcore, though this is not the, you know, very polished, like, oh, you could possibly see them on Warped Tour kind of metalcore. Like, this is more that early metalcore that was closer to, like, you know, Earth Crisis and, you know, shit like that. It was a bit more abrasive, and this one was a bit more technical. Like, there's a lot of wild, dissonant riffs on here and like kind of spaz outs in terms of style. I actually had a Ferret Records sampler that had the second track Broken Mouth on it, and this is a Ferret Records release, which pretty much you say Ferret Records, you kind of know what you're getting. That's kind of in that same ilk as Trustkill in terms of like the big metalcore insurgents in the early 2000s. And I really dug that song. It's just fucking heavier than hell, and it has this like alarm clock sort of like pulsing syncopated riff to it and giant fucking breakdowns. And I gotta say, these guys were pulling influences from a lot of different camps. Like, you had, again, that early metalcore sound, kind of like Indecision or Converge, but you also had some stuff in here that sounded very mellow deathish, which that started to come over here and started to infuse itself in metalcore later. Stuff that's very similar to The Haunted and like a little bit thrashy, especially the song The Montreal Screwjob. And I mean, metalcore song titles, they're just odd sometimes. Now, there are some songs I think they got maybe a little too artsy on. Prozac Antidote is, I don't know, just sort of like this dissonant, sort of noisy ambient piece that it really just doesn't go anywhere. And then the last track, The Gestation Process, has these giant Meshuggah-like riffs on it, and it has this weird fade out, and then it fucking just, you think the song's gonna end, and then it just explodes again into the opening of the song to kind of bookend it. It's just sort of a weird choice. Overall, this is a pretty decent album, and I kind of thought about doing the retro review thing for it because they only have 2 albums, and they were kind of like an underground favorite for a while. But I don't know, there's a lot of different bands we'd like to cover first, but I think it would be interesting to talk about them. But yeah, if you love early metalcore, again, you know, Indecision, Converge, Earth Crisis, early Hatebreed, that sort of thing, I would recommend checking this out. It's a pretty interesting listen. Sabbat, History of a Time to Come. This is the 1988 debut from this UK thrash band that featured Andy Sneap, which most people know Andy Sneap from, you know, production and standing in for Glenn Tipton here lately, but at one point he had a badass thrash band, and holy shit, this was a really sweet album. I was looking for their stuff for a while. I came upon this one again at Under the Surface Records, and it was like, holy shit, I fucking found it. I might have squeed audibly when I saw this too. Now, this band only released 3 albums, so I'm on the hunt for the other 2. They broke up in '91, so this is definitely retro review material in the future, because this is absolutely badass. They had a very vicious style of thrash metal, like kind of German thrash meets like Bay Area. So think Exodus meets Creator. It is riffier than hell, but it is fast and aggressive. I love the guitar work on here. It's absolutely amazing. Very vicious vocals too, and I really love how like kind of over the top and just kind of snarling they are. A lot of them kind of remind me of like later Death, just in terms of that higher scream that Chuck Schuldiner had in terms of like, you know, Human and then Onward. This definitely favors longer songs too, but they are well thought out, and I like the fact that they managed to stay aggressive, but there's a lot of dynamics, there's a lot of cool nuances in them to keep them interesting. And I do think it's really interesting that both Slayer and Sabbat both like being behind Crooked Crosses, because they have a song called Behind the Crooked Cross too, and it's awesome as well. It's a very well-paced album too. Like, this thing was just a non-stop assault of killer riffs and just great lead play. The guitar tone reminds me a lot of early Testament albums, which, you know, it's a bit of a squawky, rough tone, but I love it because I grew up with it, and hearing it again was like, this is like home. I pretty much loved every song in here, but Horned is the Hunter, the big 8-minute one, is just a flat-out fucking banger. Again, I am on the hunt for more of their albums. I know their second album is highly regarded too. I'm not sure about the third one, but I'll still probably check it out because, again, I want to do a retro review on this band. I think they were super fucking underrated, and yeah, who knows, maybe a while from now I'll throw this in an underrated thrash metal albums if I just get bored, because I want to talk about this band again because this album fucking whoops ass. So yeah, I really dig this. If you have never jammed Sabbat, this might be a good place to start. I don't know, I have to listen to the other 2 to really get a reading on it, but I know I really like this. So yeah, if you like your thrash aggressive as hell, but with some cool songwriting nuance, definitely check this out. Sentenced, North from Here. This is the second album from this Finnish then death metal act. Came out in 1993. I've been looking for this album for a while because I absolutely love their debut, Shadows of the Past. I think it's fucking fantastic and super underrated. This one is a bit different. This is a wild album, to be honest. Like, the songwriting on here is just strange. There's lots of weird, wild guitar playing and like harmonies and keys that kind of go together in strange, dissonant ways. Some of it's kind of similar musically to Demolish. This was definitely them really experimenting more, because the first album was definitely more straightforward death metal. This is maybe melodic death metal, but it's still very brutal and heavy at times. Now, they shifted over the vocals from a death metal growl to more of like a melodic death metal growl, so it's a little bit more mid-register in here. But honestly, the thing that really just drew me in was just how crazy the music is, but it's very catchy. Again, it's just strange songwriting, like transitions coming out of nowhere and weird places for synths, but it doesn't come off as just like messy. It comes off as well thought out, but intentionally just kind of strange. Now, they kind of follow a same trajectory as Amorphous. Amorphous started off with a killer fucking death metal sound with Carillion Isthmus, and then Tales from the Thousand Lakes, definitely a bit different. Still has their core sound at that point, but they definitely expanded out, threw in some folky melodies. This has some of that, but again, I think they just went for strange. Like, I would almost say this is kind of progressive in a way. And by that, it's maybe a little bit more creative and interesting than the debut, but I still really love that debut. I need to check out the next album, Amok. I've heard that is a really strange one as well. And I don't know, like, I've kind of stayed away from like the later Sentence stuff because the stuff I've heard really didn't appeal to me much. But this early stuff from Sentence is absolutely fucking amazing. So I might just kind of creep my way forward. I might actually pick up Amok just to check out that one. From there, I think that's where it kind of shifts over to the more goth rock-ish sort of stuff, but I want to hear more stuff like this because this is just a fucking nuts album. Absolutely killer stuff. I love early Sentence. I wish I liked all their other stuff, but I don't know. Maybe it'll grow on me. Who knows? But this is flat out awesome, and you should check it out. All right, we got a pair from Scorpions. We have Virgin Killer. Thank God this does not have the original fucking album art. Seriously, in the history of questionable fucking covers in rock and roll history, Virgin Killer. What the fuck? Were there literally no fucking other ideas? Like, well, what's the idea for the cover? Naked 10-year-old girl. Really? That's it? Uh-huh. Yeah. Like, literally nothing else. No. Well, you could put like a picture of the band on there instead, I guess. Cool, let's go with that. And it's not as though Animal Magnetism isn't a fucking weird one, because I look at this one and was like, dude, what's going on here? I feel like the other name for this album was This Peanut Butter Isn't Gonna Lick Itself Off My Balls, so get to it. And I feel like the dog's just like, man, I mean, I do love peanut butter. Why the hell is this chick here? Man, she doesn't have to be here. This is the part that's really making it weird, right? I don't know. Scorpions album covers in those early years, little, I don't know. Like, I just don't fucking know. But musically, pretty damn cool. Now, this one came out in 1977. This is actually before Taken by Force, which is probably one of my favorite albums. And this kind of captures a bit of that. Like, there's a little bit of a shift to more straightforward rock. They're kind of ditching the krautrock sound a little bit. And I don't know, it's starting to really come together. Like, these songs are just hooky. They're kind of built more on simple riffs, though there are some ones that do get a little bit more, like, twisted and kind of strange. Uli Jon Roth. I fucking love his guitar work on here. Dude cannot fucking sing to save his life. And unfortunately, he's on, I believe, 2 songs in here. Hellcat, while I like that song, like, it's a fun, adventurous, kind of like Thin Lizzy-ish kind of song, oh my god, his vocals are fucking awful. Like, he's just out of key the entire fucking time. Was Klaus not available that day? Like, I don't know. Like, there's no way that he heard that and was like, yeah, it sounds good. And the rest of the band was like, you sure you don't want to do like another take? Like maybe a couple more? And he was like, nah, fine. Why? You hear something I don't? Like, oh, I hear a lot you don't. But musically, I really dig this. Like, it has that old school classic rock sort of vibe to it, and the songs are fucking fun. Now, Animal Magnetism is definitely a shift to more of the Scorpions that I really grew up knowing, because, again, that No One Like You video was all over the place. Now, this one, I mean, I'll admit, I bought just because I love the song The Zoo. It is one of the Scorpions' best songs, but I ended up liking most of this album. The title track, I think, is a flat-out cool, like, moody jam. Like, it's just kind of a slow build of a song, and I don't know, I just love it. Like, it has this kind of chill vibe, and it kind of steadily gets, like, a bit heavier. And you could hear, like, the difference in the riffs now. Like, they were going for simpler, more accessible riffs, like, of course, The Zoo. And you could hear this band was on the precipice of becoming much bigger. Like, Love Drive before this was definitely them pushing for more accessibility, but kind of doing it in their own way. Like, it's still gritty, it's still fun, it's still, you know, heavy. But at the same time, I kind of like the more experimental stuff in the earlier years with Uli Jon Roth. So, I don't know, I like both of them, but for different reasons. I will jam the living fuck out of The Zoo anytime, though. Great fucking song. But yeah, been trying to get the earlier Scorpions albums because I like that fucking sound. It's just kind of, maybe after Love It for Sting, because, I mean, it does have some songs I do love on it. After that, it's kind of a hit or miss. But the early stuff, fucking gold. I think that shit is super underrated, and if you've never checked out earlier Scorpions, like, you know, stuff that was before they got huge, honestly, that is the way more interesting stuff in my mind. But yeah, I recommend both of these for classic metal enthusiasts, for those that haven't heard this, and for those that have, I don't really think I have anything to say to really contribute to you guys. But yeah, check these out. Fun albums, questionable art decisions, but that's kind of the Scorpions. Beholder, Arcane Subreptus. It's the debut album from this Canadian black and thrash metal act, and everything is in French or Quebecois, and I can't pronounce a goddamn thing in that language, so there's going to be some butchering if I have to say in these titles. But I really dig this. This is black and thrash, but it leans way more towards the black metal side. Like, the atmosphere is much more cold, the vocals are really ghastly, and the production is very raw, but you still have thrashy riffs in there and sort of that thrashy aggression kind of behind all of that. I was kind of surprised this has a lot of blast beats. Like, instead of the you know, thrashy gallops that you would kind of expect with a lot of black and thrash. This is very blast beat driven, though there are some really cool grooves in it, especially on Succub de Lilith. That probably translates to Succubus of Lilith. Maybe? I don't know. But solid song. Very groovy, very atmospheric. But like the rest of this is just sort of a bullet train. Like it is fast, it is aggressive. Again, that thrash aggression is there, but when it comes on the overall style, I think most of the time you'd probably just call this black metal, but I fucking dig it. It's aggressive throughout. I love that sort of thing. And I really like the production. Like the production kind of makes this feel just really cold and evil. And I think that kind of adds another dimension in the sound because a lot of black and thrash, it's interesting with fusions because generally you'll see them favor one side over the other. Very rarely do you get that perfect mix, but I think this one's kind of refreshing as it favors more the black metal side and it kind of gives it that just, I don't know, extra dark feel to it. Solid stuff. Now this is one I got in the Metalhead box and I really, really dig this one. So thank you Metalhead box for throwing me another cool underground band to talk about. So yeah, definitely check this one out. And finally we have Shield of Wings, Unfinished. This is their debut album, came out this year. This is also one I got in the Metalhead box, and this is Gothic / symphonic metal. And I'm not the biggest symphonic metal fan, so I don't know if I'm necessarily the right person to actually talk about this in terms of like what's good or bad in the style, but I can say that there's a good amount of this that I really did like. I think the vocals, especially the female vocals, are awesome, and it's great to hear some harsh screams brought in, which I believe is the backup vocalist, which she is either guitar or bass on here. But it adds a cool dynamic. I was kind of expecting something like, you know, like After Forever or maybe Lacuna Coil. Like, again, I'm not like the biggest fan of this genre, so I don't even have probably the proper comparisons here. But the symphonic elements aren't so out front that they're drowning out everything, which I definitely appreciate because I kind of get that a lot in a lot of symphonic metal. But this, they're kind of in a nice place in the mix. The vocals are nice down front, and the riffs on here are pretty solid. There's a lot of straight up melodic death metal riffs, like very akin to like the big chuggy songs you'd hear from Hypocrisy. Now, like a lot of bands, I think on the style, there are some folkier elements. The song Native Colossus definitely has some folky melodies that kind of remind me a bit of like maybe earlier Within Temptation. I don't know. Again, I'm not really huge in this style, so I'm probably not pulling the right comparisons. But it does get dark on here, which I do like that. You know, it doesn't feel so whimsical and like Disney on Ice, except with like guitars. The song Breathing is kind of sinister and foreboding, like a little bit of that gothic atmosphere comes out a bit more, and there's some aggression to it. Again, not really my thing, but I can't say it's bad because I thought there were some really solid songs in here. It's just not a style that I'm particularly into, but I will say if you are into symphonic metal and gothic metal, there's some really good stuff in here. There's some stuff that is kind of melodic death metal in terms of like its heaviness and sound. And again, I like the vocals. I think the vocals on here are really solid. But yeah, even me not being the biggest symphonic metal fan found some stuff that I liked on here, so that might be a good sign. So yeah, check it out. All right, that knocks out another giant fucking pile, and I already have like a small stack building for collection update number 100. What the fuck is wrong with me? I might officially buy too much shit, but I don't care because I enjoy it, and I love sitting back and discovering new music, clearly, and finding old stuff that I've been missing out on for years because, again, this stack kind of embodied that, and I think the next stack has some more old shit that I just kind of slept on for a while. So, of course, plenty of reviews coming. I don't know if Carcass will be done by the time this comes out because I don't know when this one's going to come out, but if it hasn't come out yet, we should be coming out with it soon. And if it has, I hope you enjoyed it because I love that fucking band. And, of course, looking forward to doing the rest of this new batch of rankings we have coming. But, yeah, tons of stuff coming here. So, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there will be a link down below. There will also be a link to our giveaway for when we hit 10,000 subscribers, which is still just fucking insane. And at this point, we are less than 100 away from it. So this giveaway entails a $100 gift card to Bandcamp, a limited pressing of Alien Weaponry's new album, and one of our new shirts, which if you would like to get a shirt of your own, hit us up on thrallsmetal.com. There will also be a link down there for that. But yeah, all you have to do for this giveaway is just comment on the giveaway video, which is playing automatically on our channel. And that is it. That is it. You comment and you are in. And thank you to everyone for getting us this far. It has been an amazing ride. I know I say this shit all the time, but I mean it, and I just try to think of different ways to say it, but mostly just kind of comes out the same, I think. But it's honest, at least. So yeah, thank you all very much once again, and we will catch you later.